Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be exploring some thelemic texts.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, should be really interesting. We've got a journal called Black Pearl, and then also a book that's delving into the Agrusa system.
Excellent. That's a really fascinating collection to dive into.
It is. There's definitely some pretty intense concepts that we're going to be looking at.
Yeah, for sure. It looks like we'll be encountering things like Kundalini energy, the mysterious Book of the Ruby Star,
Oh, wow.
and even the role of deities like Babylon.
It seems like we're in for a wild ride.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack.
Yeah. So for those who are maybe new to Thelema, can you give us a little bit of a background about what it's all about?
Sure. So Thelema is a spiritual philosophy and magical system that emerged in the early 20th century.
Okay.
And it really revolves around the idea of discovering and fulfilling your true will, which is often expressed in that famous phrase, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Do what thou wilt. That's a pretty bold statement.
It is, but I imagine it's not about just doing whatever you feel like in the moment, right?
Exactly. It's not about just following every fleeting desire or whim. It's much more about aligning your actions with your truest self, your deepest purpose.
Oh, okay.
And that takes a lot of self-exploration and understanding to figure out what that actually is.
So it's more about like aligning yourself with your authentic path
Exactly.
rather than just kind of giving in to your base desires.
Exactly. And that's where the MA comes in.
Ah, yes, the Aner, or Argentium Astrum,
Yes,
which I understand is an order that's devoted to thelemic practice.
that's right.
So is that kind of like a school for Thelemites, would you say?
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. It provides a really structured system of study and practice to help guide individuals along their thelemic journey.
Okay, and then would you say that the Black Pearl journal that we have fits into that guidance in some way?
Well, Black Pearl is actually published by the College of Thelema,
Okay.
which is an organization dedicated to thelemic education and training.
Oh, very cool. So we're going straight to the source.
Exactly.
I'm curious about this Book of the Ruby Star that's mentioned in Black Pearl.
Yeah,
What can you tell us about that? It sounds pretty mysterious.
it is. It's considered a secret ritual text within the Ane.
Okay.
And from what I've gathered, it focuses on Kundalini.
Kundalini energy.
Yes, that potent energy that's believed to reside at the base of the spine.
Yeah, that's the one that's depicted as like a coiled serpent, right?
Exactly.
It sounds pretty intense.
It can be a really powerful force.
Yeah.
And the commentary on Black Pearl actually suggests that the Book of the Ruby Star uses sexual symbolism and practices as a way to awaken and direct that Kundalini energy.
Oh, wow. I'm starting to see why you said this was going to be a wild ride.
Yeah.
One thing that I noticed in the commentary was the emphasis on shamelessness and freedom from taboo when approaching these practices,
Right.
which seems pretty bold even for a system like Thelema.
It definitely challenges conventional norms and societal expectations.
It does.
But it's important to remember that this doesn't mean just throwing out all inhibitions or acting recklessly.
Okay.
The commentary is actually very clear about the importance of careful preparation and working with a partner who is equally committed and prepared.
So there's a lot of intentionality and respect that goes into it.
Absolutely. It even refers to the partner as an altar to signify their sacred role in the ritual.
I see. So it's not about just being like, careless with this.
No, not at all.
It's about really treating it with the respect that it deserves.
Exactly. And that makes sense when you consider how potentially intense Kundalini energy can be.
Right. And speaking of Kundalini, you mentioned chakras earlier.
Yes.
Those energy centers along the spine.
Yes.
What role do they play in all of this?
The chakras are seen as key points in the flow of Kundalini energy.
Okay.
And in the Book of the Ruby Star, these chakras are actually connected to the planets,
Oh, wow.
creating this kind of cosmic map within the body.
That's really fascinating. So it's like we have a cosmic map within ourselves. That's really cool. I also noticed that the commentary talks about specific techniques like breath control,
Yes.
visualization, and even using specific sounds
Wow.
to work with this energy.
Right? It's a very precise and deliberate process.
Yeah.
You can almost think of the chakras as a series of energy centers, like spiritual power stations.
Okay.
And these techniques are the tools for activating and balancing that energy flow.
I like that analogy. That makes a lot of sense.
Good.
But there's one part that I'm still a little confused about.
Okay.
The commentary mentions spilling one's blood as part of this ritual.
Yes.
And that sounds a little intense, to put it mildly.
It's a very powerful image.
It is.
But remember, Thelema is full of symbolism.
Right.
So spilling one's blood in this context isn't meant to be taken literally.
Okay.
It's about surrender, a symbolic representation of sacrificing the ego to a higher power.
So it's not about like actual physical blood.
No.
It's more about letting go of those things that are holding you back.
Exactly. Like a symbolic death of the ego.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot more sense. I was trying to figure out how that worked.
Right.
And I see that the commentary even connects this to vampirism.
Yes.
But again, as a metaphor.
It's a metaphor, exactly.
So it's about dedicating your life, force your essence to the great work of self-transformation.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Good.
It's fascinating how Thelema uses these powerful, sometimes shocking images to get these ideas across.
Yeah.
It's like shaking us out of our comfort zone
Yeah.
and forcing us to really look at those deeper, sometimes hidden aspects of ourselves.
Exactly. It's a way of pushing us to go beyond just the surface level and really delve into those mysteries that are within us.
Uh-huh. And speaking of delving into mysteries, the Book of the Ruby Star also references several deities and archetypes.
Yes, it does.
And one that stood out to me was Babylon,
Yes.
who, from what I've heard, is a pretty major figure in Thelema,
She is.
especially for women.
Yes.
And what I heard is she's often described as a goddess of love,
Uh-huh.
sexuality, and spiritual liberation.
That's right.
And I think that really resonates with a lot of women who are seeking to kind of embrace their own power and break free from maybe some societal constraints that have been placed upon them.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like she really embodies that idea of reclaiming your power and expressing your authentic self.
Yeah, and that's such a central theme in Thelema.
It is.
So it makes sense that she would be such a prominent figure.
Yeah, definitely.
And then I also see that the commentary mentions other deities like Kali, Nuit, and Hadit.
Yeah.
Are these all part of like a Thelemic pantheon?
Not exactly a pantheon in the traditional sense.
Okay.
In Thelema, deities are often seen as symbolic representations of powerful forces within the psyche.
So they're not necessarily literal beings,
Right.
but rather archetypes that represent different aspects of ourselves and the universe.
That's a good way to understand it.
Okay.
And by working with these archetypes through practices like ritual and meditation, Thelemites seek to integrate those powerful forces into their own being.
So it's like we're using these symbols to access and understand these deeper truths about ourselves and about the universe.
Exactly.
And Thelema is full of symbols like this.
It is.
Not just deities, but also numbers,
Right.
colors, astrological correspondences, and a lot more.
Yeah, it's a very complex system with many layers of meaning waiting to be uncovered.
Yeah, and speaking of numbers, I noticed that the commentary places a lot of emphasis on numerology.
Yes. Numerology plays a really significant role in Thelemic practice.
Okay.
Numbers are believed to hold really symbolic meanings.
Okay.
And by understanding these meanings, we can gain a deeper insight into ourselves and the world around us.
And it even mentions specific numbers like 66, 93,
Right.
and 84.
Yeah. Do you remember what those numbers represent?
Well, 66 I know is associated with the Book of the Ruby Star.
Yes.
And magic.
That's right. And 93.
93, that's the central number in Thelema, right?
Yes.
Which represents love and will.
Exactly.
And it aligns with that key phrase, do what thou wilt.
Yes. Perfect. And what about 84?
84, I'm not sure about that one.
Okay, well, 84 represents the union of Mars and Venus energies, which is something we're going to explore further later on. But for now, just keep that number in mind.
Okay, this numerology stuff kind of reminds me of gematria, which is a system that assigns numerical values to letters
Yes,
to kind of uncover the hidden meanings within text.
that's right.
Is that something that Selemites use as well?
Yes, gematria is another really useful tool for delving into those layers of meaning in Thelema.
Okay.
For example, let's say you're contemplating the word Thelema itself.
Okay.
You could use gematria to assign a numerical value to each letter based on a specific system,
Okay.
and then you would add those values together.
Okay.
And the resulting number could then reveal hidden connections to other concepts or ideas within Thelema.
Wow. So it's like a secret code almost.
It is.
Wow. That's so cool. I'm really starting to see how deep and intricate Thelema can be.
It really is a journey of exploration and discovery.
It is.
It challenges us to look beyond the surface of things and delve into those deeper mysteries of existence.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Thelema, the Ere, the Book of the Ruby Star, Kundalini, deities, numerology.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in.
It is a lot to take in. But the important thing to remember is that all of these concepts are interconnected.
Right.
They form a web of meaning that helps us understand the Thelemic worldview.
That's a great way to put it. It's like a web of interconnected ideas that lead to a greater understanding.
Exactly.
And for someone like me who's just kind of starting to explore Thelema, where would you say is a good place to begin unraveling that web?
One of the most crucial concepts in Thelema is the idea of crossing the abyss.
The abyss. That sounds a little ominous.
It does sound ominous, doesn't it?
What exactly is the abyss?
So you can imagine it as a point in your journey where you have to confront your deepest fears and the limitations of your ego.
Oh, wow.
It's not a physical place, of course, but it's a symbolic representation of a profound spiritual challenge.
Okay, and what kind of challenge are we talking about here?
It's about confronting the darkest parts of ourselves,
Okay.
facing the dissolution of the ego,
Wow.
and really stripping away all of those illusions and attachments that we cling to.
So it's like a complete dismantling of the self in a way.
It is a very terrifying and transformative experience.
Yeah.
It's often described as a type of spiritual death.
But what comes after that death?
That's where the true transformation lies.
Okay.
In Thelema, it's believed that by successfully navigating the abyss, you emerge as a completely new being,
Oh, wow.
free from those constraints of the ego and fully aligned with your true will.
So it's like a rebirth into a higher state of consciousness.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's why crossing the abyss is so important in Thelema.
Because you have to go through that in order to reach.
It's seen as a necessary step
Yeah.
in achieving true spiritual liberation.
Wow, okay.
Until we confront and overcome those limitations of our ego, we can't fully realize our true potential
Okay.
or connect with the divine.
So it's not just about the mystical ritual
Right.
and the esoteric practices.
No, it's much more than that.
It's really about confronting our inner demons.
Yes.
And transforming ourselves from within.
Exactly. It's about applying these Thelemic principles to really understand ourselves.
Right.
And then using that understanding to navigate the challenges on our spiritual path.
I see.
It's about facing those shadows head on.
And you mentioned something called Koranzan earlier.
Yes.
How does that fit into all of this?
Koranzan. So think of Koranzan as the embodiment of all those forces of chaos and ego dissolution that you encounter when you're crossing the abyss.
Okay.
It represents all the fears, the doubts, the attachments that hold us back from true spiritual freedom.
So to cross the abyss, you basically have to confront and overcome Koranzan.
That's exactly right.
Okay. And that sounds like a pretty intense battle.
It can be a very intense battle, but it's not a physical fight.
Okay.
It's more of a battle of wills and consciousness.
Yep.
And that brings us to another fascinating element of Thelema, the personal experiences of Aleister Crowley,
Oh, yes. Aleister Crowley.
the founder of the system.
A very controversial figure,
He is a very controversial figure.
but definitely a key player in this whole Thelemic world.
Absolutely.
Did he actually confront this Koranzan entity?
He did. In fact, the commentary mentions Crowley's own account of confronting Koranzan in a magical ritual.
Oh, wow.
And it was said to be a very harrowing experience full of psychological and spiritual challenges.
So it wasn't just theory for him.
Oh,
It was something that he actually went through.
he lived it.
I'd love to hear more about his experience and how he managed to overcome Koranzan.
Well, that's a great place to pick up after a quick break. We'll delve into Crowley's encounter with Koranzan and explore what insights we can glean from his experience.
Sounds good. So we were talking about Aleister Crowley's personal encounter with Koranzan.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that experience?
Well, Crowley's account really highlights the importance of focus clarity. And when dealing with these really powerful forces like Koranzan, it wasn't a physical battle, but rather a psychological and spiritual one where Crowley had to use all his inner strength to resist Koranzan's attempts to, break through his protective circle and disrupt the ritual.
So it was almost like a test of his magical and mental resilience.
Exactly.
Did Crowley mention any specific techniques or strategies he used?
Yes. He emphasized the power of silence and concentration.
Okay.
He actually said that Koranzan, being a creature of chaos,
Okay.
fears concentration and will even obey commands to avoid it.
That's fascinating. So by cultivating this inner stillness and focus,
Yep.
you can actually repel these forces of chaos.
That's right.
It makes you wonder if there are any connections between Crowley's experience and other thelemic practices.
Yeah, you're right to make that connection.
Okay.
In fact, you brought another source, St. John, which is actually a diary of a magical retirement that Crowley undertook.
Right.
It details his journey from Adeptus Minor to Adeptus Major within the Air system.
And John St. John also includes a ritual called Liber Pyramidos,
Exactly.
which is a self-initiation ritual that Crowley developed
Yeah.
during his retirement.
Yes. And while Liber Pyramidos doesn't directly mention Corazon or the Abyss,
Okay.
it uses a lot of symbolism that's related to Nuit.
Right.
The Thelemic concept of the infinite night sky and boundless potential.
Oh, knew it. Didn't we come across that in the Book of the Ruby Star commentary as well?
You have a sharp memory.
It connected Nuit with night as a source of sexual energy, right?
You got it. And that's where things get really fascinating.
Okay.
Because it seems that Crowley was working with this concept of Nuit on multiple levels in relation to sexual mysticism
Okay.
and in a broader, more cosmic sense.
Okay, my mind is officially blown.
Right.
But before we get too sidetracked,
Right.
can you tell me a little bit more about Liber Pyramidos? What kind of ritual is it, and what is its purpose?
Liber Pyramidos is a complex and multi-layered ritual, and one section that really stands out is called Reflections, a ritual of the path of Mem.
Okay.
And it focuses on this idea of becoming a perfect reflection of one's holy guardian angel.
Okay, can you remind me what the Holy Guardian Angel represents in Thelema? I'm still trying to wrap my head around that one.
Yeah, it's a central concept in Thelema.
Okay.
It's often described as the truth self, your divine will,
Mhm.
the unique path you're meant to follow in this life.
Okay.
Some people describe it as a higher self or like a divine guide.
Okay, so this reflections ritual
Yes.
is about connecting with that inner guide
Yeah.
and aligning yourself with your true purpose.
That's one way to interpret it.
Okay.
The ritual actually uses a lot of water symbolism, like the sea,
Okay.
to represent the ebb and flow of emotions and thoughts.
So how does water tie into becoming a reflection of your holy guardian angel?
Well, the ritual suggests that by stilling the turbulent waters of the mind
Okay.
and emotions, you can then perceive the reflection of your holy guardian angel more clearly. Imagine looking into a calm lake and seeing your own reflection perfectly.
I love that analogy.
Good one.
It makes it so much easier to grasp.
It does.
And does the ritual itself have any specific elements to it?
Yes. It incorporates music,
Okay.
meditation,
Okay.
specific postures,
Uh-huh.
invocations, all designed to facilitate this process of inner reflection and alignment.
So it's like creating the right conditions
Yes.
for that inner connection to emerge.
Exactly.
And this emphasis on stillness and focus in Liber Pyramidos
Yes.
seems to kind of echo Crowley's experience confronting Corazon.
You're right, because remember he said that Corazon fears concentration.
Right. It's like achieving that state of stillness and focus that's cultivated in Liber Pyramidos could be crucial for confronting and overcoming those forces of chaos that are represented by Corazon.
Yeah, you've made a really key connection there.
Okay.
It highlights the importance of developing inner strength and clarity on the thelemic path.
Right.
Crossing the abyss isn't just about battling demons. Okay. It's about mastering yourself.
Wow, that's really powerful. It connects these two seemingly separate rituals in a whole new way.
Yeah, it does.
I'd like to bring Babylon back into the conversation.
Okay.
We touched on her a little bit earlier,
Yes.
but she seems to play a pretty significant role in Thelema,
She does.
especially when it comes to those more intense concepts that we were discussing, like
Right.
Kundalini and sexual mysticism.
Yes.
What else do our sources reveal about Babylon and her role in these practices?
Well, another article in Black Pearl caught my eye.
Okay.
It's titled Bodily Dedication to the Great Work Through the Sexual Mysteries.
Wow, that title is very direct.
It is.
But it dives right into how specific practices, especially those involving consecrated sexual union, can be used to connect with the divine.
Yes.
And Babylon plays a key role here.
Yes, she does.
Okay, before we go any further,
Yes.
can we just clarify what consecrated sexual union means in this context? It's a sensitive topic,
It is.
and I just want to make sure that we're approaching it respectfully.
Of course.
So what does that mean?
So, in essence, consecrated sexual union refers to sexual practices that are performed with a spiritual intention as a means of accessing higher states of consciousness.
So it's not just about physical pleasure.
No.
It's about using that sexual energy
Yeah,
as a tool for spiritual growth.
Exactly. And the article emphasizes that it's not about indulging in your base desires,
Okay.
but about channeling that energy towards a higher purpose.
Okay, I'm following so far, but how does Babylon fit into all of this?
Well, the article actually describes a ritual that is dedicated to the worship of both Aphrodite and Ares,
Whoa.
the Greek deities associated with love and war, respectively.
Love and war, those seem like opposite forces.
They do. But remember, Thelema often seeks to unite opposites, to find that balance between seemingly contradictory forces.
Okay.
And this ritual aims to harness both of those energies, Aphrodite's love and Ares' strength, for the purpose of spiritual transformation.
But we were talking about Babylon.
Right. The connection lies in how the ritual positions the participants.
Okay.
So one is designated as a temple, dedicated to the worship of either Aphrodite or Ares.
I see. And then the other participant is like the priest or priestess
Yes.
who performs the worship.
Exactly. And the article suggests that this framework can be adapted for the worship of other deities, including Babylon.
Ah, so by becoming a temple dedicated to Babylon,
Yes.
you can then be the recipient of that worship and devotion,
Yes.
thereby invoking her energies.
That's the idea.
Okay.
And the article outlines a whole ceremony for consecrating someone as a temple,
Oh, wow.
involving purification, invocation, and even a symbolic offering of incense.
It's interesting how much emphasis is placed on ritual and ceremony in Thelema.
It
It really shows how seriously these practices are taken.
Yeah, absolutely. It emphasizes that this is not something to be approached casually or flippantly.
Right.
It requires dedication, intention, and a deep understanding of the principles involved.
Makes sense. I'm really starting to understand how complex and multifaceted Thelema really is.
It is.
We've covered Kundalini awakenings,
Mhm.
symbolic death
Yeah.
deities,
Right?
and now consecrated sexual union.
Yes.
It's a lot to process.
It is. It's understandable if some of these concepts might feel a little unconventional or even challenging,
Yeah.
but that's part of what makes exploring Thelema so fascinating.
Right.
It pushes us to confront our preconceived notions and explore the depths of human potential.
So with all this talk about rituals and these esoteric practices, I'm curious about the more practical side of Thelema.
Okay.
Does it offer any guidance on how to apply these teachings to everyday life?
That's a great question, and it's one that gets to the heart of what makes Thelema so relevant, even beyond those rituals and symbolism.
Okay.
Remember that key phrase, do what thou wilt.
Of course. That seems to be at the core of Thelema.
It is. And while it might sound like a free pass to do whatever you please, it actually points to a deeper principle of aligning yourself with your true will.
So it's not about indulging in fleeting desires,
Exactly.
but about really understanding your deepest purpose and living in accordance with that.
Precisely. And that requires a deep level of self-knowledge, which is where the practical application of Thelema comes in.
Oh, okay.
The teachings encourage us to really explore our strengths, weaknesses, desires, and fears,
Okay.
to really understand who we are at our core.
So it's almost like using Thelema as a framework for personal growth and self-discovery.
That's a great way to put it. And once you have that clearer understanding of yourself,
Okay.
you can then start to align your actions with your true will,
Uh-huh.
leading to a more fulfilling and authentic life.
So you're making choices that are in alignment with your truest self,
Yes.
rather than maybe being driven by some external pressures or societal expectations.
Exactly.
That's really empowering.
It is.
It's like Thelema is giving you the tools to create your own destiny
Yes.
and to live a life that is true to who you are.
That's exactly right.
And is that like a one-time thing? Or is that like an ongoing process?
It's an ongoing process.
Right, okay.
The teachings emphasize that this process of self-discovery is ongoing.
Okay.
It's not a destination, but a journey, a constant evolution and refinement of yourself.
So it's a continuous process of growth and self-awareness.
Exactly.
And that kind of ties back to the idea of Thelema as a system of self-knowledge, right?
It does.
It's not just about the mystical rituals and esoteric practices,
Right.
but it's about applying those principles to better understand ourselves and live a more authentic life.
Exactly.
That's really cool. Okay, so we've talked a lot about these broad concepts,
Right.
but I want to circle back to those specific numbers that we were discussing earlier,
Okay.
especially 66 and 84.
Yes.
What more can our sources tell us about their significance in Thelema?
Well, luckily, Black Pearl has an entire article dedicated to 66 and 84.
Oh, perfect.
So we can dive right in.
Okay, so we already touched on 66, being associated with the Book of the Ruby Star and magic.
Yes.
But what about 84?
Well, the article really dives into the deeper meaning behind 84,
Okay.
explaining that it represents the union of Mars and Venus energies.
We mentioned that briefly earlier,
Yeah.
but what does that mean in like a practical sense?
Well, think back to that ritual we discussed where someone becomes a temple
Okay.
dedicated to either Aphrodite or Ares.
Right, the ritual that combines those energies of love and war.
Exactly.
Okay.
So 84 represents that same concept of uniting those seemingly opposite forces,
Okay.
finding balance and harmony between passion and strength, creation and destruction.
So it's like weaving together those seemingly disparate threads of human experience.
Exactly.
Okay, so 84 isn't just like a random number.
No,
It's a symbol of a deeper philosophical principle within Thelema.
you got it.
I see. And the article goes on to explain
It does.
that it's the sum of the numbers 6 and 78.
Yes.
What's so special about those two?
Well, 6 is associated with the planet Venus,
Sunny.
representing love, beauty, and harmony.
Okay.
And 78 is connected to Mars, embodying strength, courage, and willpower.
So 84 literally becomes the numerical representation of that union between Venusian and Martian energies.
It does, and it highlights that Thelemic idea that true power comes from balancing and integrating these seemingly opposite forces within ourselves.
It's like finding that sweet spot between the receptive and the assertive,
Uh-huh.
the creative and the destructive.
Exactly.
And does the article go any deeper than that?
Oh, yes. It goes on to explore other numerological connections,
Wow.
linking 84 to concepts like the union of opposites, the reconciliation of free will and destiny, and even the cyclical nature of creation and destruction.
Wow. There's so much depth and symbolism packed into a single number.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it really makes you realize how much there is to uncover within Thelema.
It's like a hidden code revealing deeper layers of meaning.
Right, and that's just one example.
It is.
There's probably so many others throughout.
Oh yeah, Thelema is full of these intricate connections and symbolic language.
So I'm gathering that this deep dive
Yeah.
is really just the beginning
Yes.
of a much larger exploration.
It is. But the important thing is that you're engaging with the material.
Right.
You're asking questions, you're drawing your own connections.
And I'm definitely feeling inspired to keep learning and exploring.
That's the spirit.
Yeah.
Remember, Thelema is all about exploration and discovery.
Okay.
And numerology is just one of the many tools it offers for unlocking those deeper levels of understanding.
It's like a whole new world is opening up.
Right.
But I think our listeners could probably use a moment to process all this information
Probably a good idea.
before we dive into the next layer.
Okay.
So let's take a little pause,
Right?
and then we'll come back to explore another fascinating aspect of Thelema, the idea of experiencing these deities and entities directly. Wow. Even after that short pause, my mind is still buzzing from all the connections we've made between these Thelemic concepts.
It is fascinating how it all seems to weave together.
It is. So before the pause, we were talking about the idea of actually experiencing these deities or entities directly.
Yes, not just as symbols, but as living beings.
Exactly. With all this talk about Kundalini awakenings and crossing the abyss and even working with these powerful figures like Babylon, it makes me wonder if Thelema ever addresses that possibility, of actually encountering these forces in a tangible way.
It's a great question, and it gets to the heart of Thelemic practice.
Okay.
While Thelema often presents deities and entities as symbolic representations of inner forces,
Right.
it also acknowledges the potential for direct experience.
Oh, wow. So you're saying that it's possible to actually encounter Babylon or Nuit, not just as an abstract concept, but as a living entity.
It's certainly a possibility.
Wow.
While Thelema doesn't necessarily promise these encounters as a given,
Okay.
it definitely recognizes the potential. And this is where the idea of magical consciousness comes into play.
Okay, magical consciousness. That sounds interesting. What is that?
It's a state of awareness where you're able to perceive and interact with these subtle realms of existence,
Okay.
those dimensions that lie beyond our ordinary senses.
So it's like expanding your consciousness to include realms beyond just the physical world,
That's a great way to put it.
like tapping into a hidden reality.
Exactly.
And Thelema says that by cultivating that through things like meditation,
yes.
ritual visualization,
Right.
that it actually becomes possible to experience those entities directly.
Exactly.
That's amazing. So it's like this bridge between the symbolic and the experiential.
It is.
Allowing you to kind of connect with these deeper realities on multiple levels.
Exactly. It's about integrating those seemingly separate aspects of reality
Okay.
and recognizing that the inner and outer worlds are interconnected in ways that we may not always perceive.
That makes sense. So it's not about denying the symbolic meaning,
Right.
but also acknowledging their potential existence beyond our limited perception.
Yes, and that's where the potential risks come in.
Oh, okay. So does Thelema address that? Like, are there any dangers or pitfalls on this path?
Thankfully, Thelema doesn't shy away from the potential risks involved in this kind of exploration.
Okay, good.
In fact, there's actually a cautionary tale in John St. John
Okay.
that really illustrates this point.
I'm intrigued. What is it?
Well, it involves Aleister Crowley and his associate Victor Newberg
Okay.
performing a ritual to evoke Choronzon.
Wait, they intentionally tried to summon Choronzon.
They did.
That seems very risky.
It was a bold and risky move.
It was.
And the account suggests that things didn't go exactly as planned.
Okay, I have to hear about this. What happened?
So the ritual involved Newberg acting as the scribe,
Okay.
carefully recording everything that occurred,
Hmm.
while Crowley entered into a deep meditative state with an especially prepared circle.
So they were taking some precautions.
Yes, but the account suggests that Choronzon, being a master of deception and trickery, still managed to influence the proceedings.
How did he do that?
Well, according to the record, Choronzon attempted to break through the protective circle,
Oh, no.
using various forms of illusion and temptation to try to distract and disorient Newberg.
It's like this psychological battle
It is.
with Choronzon trying to exploit their weaknesses and
Surely.
break their concentration.
Exactly. And this account really highlights the importance of maintaining focus, clarity, and a strong will
Right.
when dealing with these powerful forces.
Absolutely.
It's a stark reminder that this path is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, you definitely have to know what you're getting yourself into and be prepared for those challenges.
Yes, and that's why Thelema really emphasizes the importance of a gradual and well-guided approach to these practices.
Okay.
It's not about rushing into the deep end,
Right.
but about developing the necessary skills and awareness step by step.
So it's like learning to swim before you jump into the ocean.
Exactly. You need the proper training and guidance to navigate those waters safely.
And Thelema provides that.
Thelema thankfully provides that guidance through its structured system of study and practice.
Okay, so while it acknowledges the risks, it also equips you with the tools and the knowledge to mitigate those risks.
Precisely. But even with all this talk about Choronzon and the potential dangers, it's important not to get caught up in fear.
Right.
Remember, the abyss and the challenges it presents are not solely about confronting darkness and chaos.
Right, so what's the ultimate goal then?
Well, in Thelema, it's believed that by successfully navigating the abyss, by confronting and overcoming those inner demons, you emerge transformed.
Okay.
You break free from those limitations of the ego and become more fully aligned with your true will.
It's like a rebirth almost.
It is a step into a higher state of being.
Wow. And what does that look like?
Well, that new state is characterized by a deeper sense of purpose,
Okay.
clarity, and connection to the divine.
So it's a state of liberation and enlightenment.
Exactly.
That sounds pretty amazing.
It's certainly not an easy path,
Yeah.
but the potential rewards are immense.
They are.
And that's what makes exploring Thelema so compelling.
Yeah.
It offers a path of self-discovery and spiritual evolution, challenging you to confront your limitations and embrace your full potential.
I completely agree. This has been such an incredible journey. I feel like we've really gone deep into some intense concepts.
We have.
Kundalini awakenings, sexual mysticism, confronting those forces of chaos, even the possibility of experiencing those deities directly.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is. It's very inspiring, though.
I'm glad you feel inspired.
I am.
And remember, we've only just scratched the surface of Thelema.
Right. There's so much more.
There's so much more to explore and discover.
Yes, and I'm feeling that sense of vastness.
Right.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to a whole new world of spiritual exploration.
That's great.
And I'm excited to see where this path leads.
That's wonderful to hear. Embrace that excitement and let your curiosity be your guide.
Curiosity is my guide. I love that.
Thelema is a journey of self-discovery, and there are countless wonders waiting to be uncovered.
And for all of our listeners out there who are feeling equally intrigued,
Yes.
I encourage you to continue exploring the world of Thelema as well.
Yes, definitely.
You never know what insights and transformations await you.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of Thelema.
It's been my pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of your own understanding.
And may your journey be filled with insight, growth, and a deeper connection to the divine within.